Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Anne-Marie Green.
And I'm Vladimir Duthier. Any moment now, lawmakers are set to hear from a former top aide to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo as they continue their investigation into the White House's dealings with Ukraine. Michael McKinley will testify before the congressional committees leading the House impeachment inquiry in another closed-door deposition. Just last week, he resigned from his position after 37 years of service. CBS News has learned former Ukraine envoy Kurt Volker has also arrived on the Hill, a previously unannounced second sitting with the House committee. Volker also abruptly resigned from his post before testifying in a closed-door hearing earlier this month.
At the White House, President Trump will speak at a joint press conference with the president of Italy later, ostensibly to address security and the two countries' economies. But other topics are likely to come up. That's going to happen at noon Eastern. We may also hear from President Trump as soon as 10 a.m. ahead of that meeting. And this all follows House Democrats' rejection of Republican pressure to formally authorize their impeachment inquiry last night. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says that they're on a, quote, path to the truth. Nancy Cortez has the latest.
At this time, we will not be having a vote.
After a meeting with Democratic members, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced that her position has not changed and a vote is not required.
The White House says it's not cooperating in part because there hasn't been a vote to formalize this impeachment inquiry. Why not hold the vote and call the White House bluff?
We're not here to call bluffs. We're here to find the truth, to uphold the Constitution of the United States. This is not a game for us.
There was more dramatic testimony Tuesday, this time from Deputy Assistant Secretary of State George Kent, who says he was told to lay low after he complained that Rudy Giuliani's efforts in Ukraine were undermining U.S. foreign policy. Texts and emails indicate Giuliani and two U.S. diplomats, Kurt Volker and Gordon Sondland, urged Ukrainian officials to investigate Mr. Trump's campaign rival Joe Biden and his son, a message the president reiterated in a July phone call with his Ukrainian counterpart.
We have learned that call was not in isolation. There was a great deal of preparatory work that was done before the call.
Kent told lawmakers he was instructed to leave Ukraine policy to the so-called three amigos, Volker, Sondland, and Secretary of Energy Rick Perry. With evidence mounting, Republicans have dialed back their defense of the president.
Here's a news flash. President Trump is not Jesus.
Instead, they're taking aim at the inquiry itself, blasting it as unfair.
This is a kangaroo court at best right now.
So Nancy Cortez is joining us now from Capitol Hill with more. Nancy, what do we know about what lawmakers discussed in their meeting Tuesday night?
Well, Democrats huddled at the end of this 2-week recess to sort of take stock of where they are, a chance to ask questions of the Speaker of the House. And after leaving that meeting, Speaker Pelosi, who we thought was perhaps on the verge of changing her mind about holding a vote on this impeachment inquiry, instead said she was going to stick with the status quo. And it appears that some of her top lieutenants, committee chairs, didn't feel that taking a vote now was the right way to go for a few reasons. First of all, they think that the inquiry is going swimmingly without a vote. They're getting a lot of information from these witnesses that they are deposing, and they don't want to do anything to rock the boat. And they know that holding a vote, even though they believe they have the votes to pass it, would open the door for Republicans to argue that if this is a formal impeachment inquiry, that the minority should get more rights, including subpoena power of its own.
So, Nancy, President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, says he's not going to cooperate with a congressional subpoena to hand over documents on Ukraine. He's not going to cooperate with even the request, which was first, and potentially this subpoena. This is a pattern that we've seen repeated over and over again. The vice president isn't going along with the House request. And I get it that they say it's not. In their soundbite there, somebody called it a kangaroo court. They don't think it's legitimate. But at what point does Nancy Pelosi say, enough is enough? If you do not comply, the House will use all the means necessary to compel someone to either produce documents or to appear?
Well, the problem is she can go that route, and she likely will, but, you still can't send U.S. Marshals to sort of round these people up and haul them to Congress to testify or rifle through their documents and pick out the ones you want and take them to investigators. You still got to go through the federal court process, which is lengthy and doesn't operate on the congressional Democrats' timetable. They would like to be able to potentially write up articles of impeachment within the next month. And so, they say that while they want these documents, if they don't get them, what it does is strengthen their case that the president and his administration are obstructing justice. And that could very well end up being one of the articles of impeachment. It's interesting to note that it isn't just Rudy Giuliani or Vice President Pence who missed their deadlines yesterday to comply. It was also the Department of Defense. And that was curious because on Sunday, the acting Secretary of Defense told Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation that he was going to do whatever he could to comply with this request. But then last night, DOD sent this blistering letter to Democratic leadership in the House and said that they won't be complying because there has been no vote, and therefore they don't see this as a legitimate inquiry. So it's very curious what sort of got to DOD leadership in those intervening couple of days between when they said they would comply and when they said they wouldn't.
Still, others are complying, and so Michael McKinley, who's going to be speaking today, he quit last week, but there are others that are still working for the government. Sondland, he's still working for the government. He's still the ambassador to the EU. Marie Yovanovitch, no longer an ambassador, but she still works for the State Department, and they're choosing to ignore the White House's directive not to participate. What do you think is sort of the difference between the groups that are complying with what the White House says and the others that are choosing to ignore it?
Well, you've got the political leadership at the White House, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, all loyal to this president and more likely to go along with what the president wants them to do. Then you've got some rank and file individuals within the administration who may be loyal to this president, may not be, but who see that there's a lot more on the line for them personally if they ignore a congressional subpoena, and who may feel a sense of obligation to, as individuals have for time immemorial, to respond to subpoenas that they get from Congress. I thought it was very interesting, the letter that Fiona Hill's lawyer sent to the White House explaining why she was rejecting this notion of potential executive privilege and that she was going to speak freely with lawmakers. Fiona Hill, you'll recall, was the president's Russia advisor until this summer. Her lawyer said that in situations where potential wrongdoing has taken place, the notion of executive privilege no longer applies. And I thought that legal argument was kind of a roadmap for some of these other individuals, some who are still working in the administration, some who aren't, to be able to say essentially the same thing, that they feel obligated to speak because they have been subpoenaed. In some cases, they're getting friendly subpoenas, if you will, saying, gee, it would really help me out, enable me to come talk to you if you would issue me a subpoena that would help me ignore the directives I'm getting from the White House and the State Department, but also because they feel a sense of obligation based on what it is that they saw and heard either at the White House or at the State Department as it reflects Ukraine policy.
All right, Nancy, thank you very much.
You're welcome.